In today's video, I'm going to be showing you two ways you can build this hexagon floating wall shelf. I'm also going to show you how I got the finish on this, which is like a weathered 40-year-old barn look. All right, let's get down to the shop and start building. All right, everybody, welcome back. And for those of you who are new here to the channel and you like what you see, old woodworking and carpentry, then hitting that subscribe button and also the picture of the notification bell, that'll notify you every time I upload a video. We have carpentry, DIY, woodworking, and there's a video for just about everybody. All right, so with that being said, we're going to get started. Also, I just want to let you guys know I started a Teespring store, and I'm going to post the link to that Teespring store down in the description below. So if you're interested in the content and you want to support the channel, that would be a great way to do it, because we have t-shirts, we have hoodies, in different colors and all sizes. So now I told you I'm going to explain to you two ways on how to build the floating shelves. I'm going to demonstrate it on the table saw, and I'll cut the shelf for it in that middle there on the miter saw, just so I can also give you a demonstration of how that works as well. So I'll explain as I go along, and then I'll tell you how I got that finish. Before we start, what I want to tell you about is the angles. I'm using 30-degree angles, and that's what's going to give you that perfect hexagon shape when everything is all glued up together. All right, let's head over to the table saw and let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do over at the table saw is rip my boards down to the width that I need, which is going to be 3.5 inches wide. I'm going to do a straight line rip here, and then I'm going to run it up against the rip fence and cut the other side parallel. Next, I'll use a digital angle gauge to set my blade to 30 degrees to make my miters. Now on this gauge, since the blade's at 90, I have to subtract 30 and set it to 60. Now to make this process easy, every time I make a cut, I flip the board over, bring it to the stop block, and cut the opposing miter. One of the benefits of having a sliding table saw is the fence slides back and forth so that you can move it behind the blade, in which case I can make these miters and use the fence as a stop block, and there'll be no binding. Now all the pieces are cut, so here's a little mock-up. Make sure everything goes together before we do a glue-up or put any dominoes in there. And you can do this on the miter saw, and it's a lot quicker, but I chose to do it on the table saw for the most accuracy possible. Now, just glued up miters on their own are not strong, so I'm going to be using dominoes here in the joints, but you can use splines, you can shoot some pin nails, but you definitely need some kind of a mechanical fastener in that joint to keep it strong. Now after I have it glued up and the dominoes are inserted, I need to clamp this up somehow. So I'm just going to use a ratchet strap. That works great for this. If you try to use traditional clamps, they're going to just slip off the corners and you're not going to get a good bite on it or good purchase. So if you use a strap like this and insert a piece of scrap wood right by where the ratcheting mechanical portion is, then you won't damage the wood either. It'll hold it tight and you can let it sit overnight. Okay guys, so I have it out of the strap clamp now. You can see the miters are pretty good, but they're not perfect. But since this is going to be whitewashed, that I could just fill that in with a little bit of wood putty or even some caulking. But if your miters weren't that good, then you can just take a file, a hand file, and you can just work it a little bit. But like I said, I want this to have like a rustic look to it. So I'm just going to leave them the way they are. And to me, that's pretty decent anyway. So any little spots, like this spot here has a tiny little gap at the front. So I'm just gonna, I'll see if I can work it a little bit. If not much, but you see how it's closing up. Working from both sides. I'm just bringing those wood fibers together right there. So that closed it up a little bit. The rest I'm just gonna put a little putty in there, and then we're gonna sand everything down. I'm only gonna go up to about 120 on this, maybe even just 100 grit, because I want it to be a little rough, because I want the grain to really pop, because I'm going to do, like I said, a whitewash, and I'm going to be using regular white water-based acrylic paint. I'm going to water it down so that we can put it on like a stain, and then let it soak in for about 2 minutes, and then wipe it off, leaving mostly the white behind and the grain popping through there. So before I do that though, I want to put a shelf in here to separate it, so this way you could put like a picture frame here and just throw some keys here while it's hanging on the wall. So these are splayed out at 30 degrees because we cut this angle at 60 degrees or 30 degrees each, making the 60 degree angle. That means that with a splay of 30 here, if I cut the shelf ends to 30 degrees, that will just sit right in there, and the miter will fall flush right onto the splayed sides, and then we'll glue that in place. Maybe just tack it in with a couple of brads. This is going to be end grain to face grain, so the connection will be kind of strong with the glue. So we'll just see how that goes, and I'll show you how to do this just real quick on the miter saw, because that's another way that you can do this whole project. You don't have to do it on the table saw. So let's go over to the miter saw. We'll turn it to 30 and make these cuts. Okay, so over here at the miter saw, and hopefully you can see this really well. What we want to do is cut this to 30 degrees. So I'm going to set the miter saw to 30. Now it doesn't have a detent at 30. You have to set it to 30, and then once you get it right, lock it in place. I have my cursor on there. Let's see, set up with my laser line. Now I want to get this right to the point because I want the miter to be nice and sharp when it sits in there. The way you can do this without having to swing the miter saw back and forth is to cut one end, and then instead of bringing it to this end, because then obviously you'd be cutting off the wrong angle, make your cut, then you just take it and flip it over, and then you cut the same angle on that end without ever changing your settings on the miter saw. So you know that both are going to be 30. You don't have to swing it to this side, maybe miss the 30 marker. All right, so let's start with our original side so you can see how this works in action. All right, so I'm going to just move it in until I get it to where I want. That's right about right there. Like I said, I want that miter to be nice and crisp on the end. Make that cut straight down. Wait for it to stop. Good. Now we need that same angle, so we could just take the board like this and flip it end for end. So you'll get the opposite cut the way you need it without changing the settings on the saw. Move that right to the end, keep it where I want it, and make the cut. That's it. And so now you have your 30 degrees on both sides, and that's going to drop right in. Now, if you were doing the whole hexagon and you need to cut all 6 pieces, then you would set up a stop block. You'd do the same thing. You'd make a cut, and then instead of just butting it up here like this, you would take it and you'd flip it over, and you'd hit the stop block, and then you'd get your other angle there. You make your cut, and then you'd have both of the angles. So all you have to do is manipulate the miters by flipping the board one way or the other and get the angle you need. All right, let's go back over there and We're gonna sand this and the project down. So we have our piece cut. Let's see how that fits. You basically just take it, and I wanted to line it up with the back so that I can have a reveal on the front here. And you just line it up like this. Obviously we're gonna, like I said, use a combination square, but just dropping it in, you can see how that's gonna sit. I'm just going to take some 120 sandpaper and just stuff sand the inside, and I'm also going to break the inside and the outside edges just so they're not sharp, but I'm not going to break the edges on the back where I want it to sit flat against the wall because I want that to look nice and crisp up against the wall. The way I'm going to do this whitewash is I have a bucket here with white acrylic satin paint, and it's a 1-to-1 mix, so it's 50-50 of water and paint, and that's to thin it down so that it goes on just a little bit heavier than a stain. Not going to go nuts with it. You can see how the grain is showing through because it's watered down. So what you can also do is actually take a little water to the rag, and you can dip the rag in the water and then wipe it off, and that'll make it even easier. Glide a little bit better, but you can see where I'm going with this. I'm just, because it's so thin, I'm able to wipe this off like a stain as much as I want in certain areas and let that grain show through. I'll do a little bit more over here, and you can see it's very, I don't know if the light is really bright, but you can see how transparent that is. See how the grain is showing through there? Now you can go as dark or as light as you want. This is the bottom of the shelf, so I'm not going to go too crazy, but just so that you can get an idea. Alright, so now my more concern here is to really get this to have the grain really pop through. So I have a damp rag, just put on the side. And dip my brush lightly again. I'm not going to go crazy. I'm going to do the inside first. Get those corners. And just drag it out. I'm just going to take this, and you can see how that's really letting the grain and the wood show through. It's just a real simple way to do that whitewash. So let that set. You could even leave some pieces exposed if you want. I want to go over that just a little bit. Okay, so I let the paint dry overnight. Now what you want to do is take 220 sandpaper, and you're going to just scuff it up, knock off and denib all the little fuzzes and little rough pieces, and get it almost glass smooth, but not perfectly smooth, because we want that little bit of rough texture underneath that lacquer sealer finish afterwards. Now here's the thing. There's two reasons you want to do that sanding. Number one, like I said, you want to knock off any little burrs and denibs and things like that that you need to get rid of. But at the same time, you need to create an adhesion for that chemical bonding of the lacquer finish afterwards. This is a little bit of an acrylic mix, an acrylic enamel that has a little bit of a sealer in it on itself. It's almost like a finish. So you could get away with just doing 2 coats of that sealer, sanding it down and leave it alone, but I want that patina of the lacquer finish over that paint. So that's going to bring out the grain even more and give that little brown tone of the underneath. Okay, so I've set it in place without any glue, just as a dry fit. And now I'm going to take a piece of painter's tape. And then what this is going to do, I'll rip this down the middle also. And I'm just going to place it right where the shelf sits against the casing, so that I have a reference point of where I'm going to drop the shelf back into to help me level it much easier. Even though this is end grain, it's going into face grain, which is long grain, so it will be a good connection. Spread it out. It's going to soak into that end grain. Like I said, Nothing crazy. You're going to have a mechanical fastener as well on there. Okay, and now I'm just going to drop it back in, getting it in position. And you can see it's much easier to reference where it's going to sit now. All I have to do is get close to the tape. The tape measure's not going to lie. It's 10 and a half. 10 and a half. 4 and 3/32, and 4 and 3/32. So that's exactly where I want it. So it's going to sit right there. So now I'm just going to take the pin nailer and I'm going to angle it in a way that it's going to go through the meat of the miter and into the casing without splitting it. That's 1, 2, and then flush. One of my personal favorites for doing things like this is a Vix Bit. Now, if you're not familiar with a Vix Bit, then it's just basically a self-centering drill bit, some people call it. It's a cone shape and the housing holds the drill bit inside, and when you plunge it into the angle bracket, the hole of the angle bracket, like a countersink, put it in place, and when you drill into it, this will center your drill bit right in the center of the hole, and then when you put in the screw, it will come out straight every time. I'm going to link the Vix Bit in the description as well. A floating shelf laying down on its back, the way it will be mounted against the wall. Pretend this is the wall. Taking a 3/4 by 3/4 angle bracket, and I want it to sit flush up against the piece of plywood so that it'll sit flush against the wall when I mount it. Now what I'm doing is I'm going to mount it right up in the corners of the 30-degree angle, right where it comes in to the miter. And what that's going to do is once it's up on the wall, that's going to really help to hide it as best as possible. So now I'll just take my drill with the Vix Bit, and now the hole is pre-drilled in the perfect spot. That's it. Alright guys, so I think that project turned out great. It was a lot of fun to build, and it's something that you can do relatively quickly, and you can produce a lot of and batch them out if you wanted to sell them, or if you just wanted to make them for your own house. So I hope you got something out of this video. Make sure you give it a like, give it a thumbs up. Check out my Teespring store. Don't forget, that's the way to support the channel. Also in that description box below, I'm going to be putting all the links to the tools that I use, and you're not going to pay any more for them in the Amazon link. I just will get a small portion of the proceeds to go back to this channel. Alright guys, so I hope you liked what you saw. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, and I'll see you guys next time in the next video, and that will be next year. So with that being said, have a safe, happy, and healthy new year, and I wish everybody the best. I'll see you guys real soon.